What would be the number one reason Belichick didn't get the Atlanta job? With that, I'm going to bring my guy Tone in, and let's see if he knows what that reason would be.
You got me thinking. You got me looking to the sky looking for an answer. Why didn't Belichick get that job in Atlanta? My first thought was whatever control he wanted, they weren't comfortable giving it entirely to him. I feel like Arthur Blank would have signed him, but I feel like he was talked out of it. That's what I think. So I feel like it has something to do with just the overall level of control. I also feel like, if I'm being honest, man, I think there's a little bit of ageism going on in the NFL right now. That's just me, though. What about you, though? What do you think?
Oh, I think it had a lot to do with $30 million annually.
Oh, yeah, I forgot he had that contract. So how does that work? Because is it similar to Frank Reich's situation?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot more sense.
So you think Arthur Blank would rather pay a guy $5 million a year or $30 million?
Of course. But I think, they were. That begs the question, how serious
$30 million in control.
That begs the question, how serious were those conversations in the first place? Because
I think they were serious, Tone, until the money got into it.
But typically the money is the first thing you think about.
See, you can't have both.
Right.
In a new place. You can't have control and the bag of vittles.
Right.
You're not going to get both.
Right. Because if he did sign on with Atlanta, he would have to forego some of that money, or Atlanta would have to pick up some of that money, right?
I think the exact number is 28.5.
Okay, that's still a lot of money.
It is the money. Yeah. Okay. I think it's 28.5, and he wanted control of the personnel department with Pioli.
Right.
On it. Because guess what you do? Raheem's getting none of that.
Mm-hmm.
And get this, to me, I look at Raheem. I'm not saying Raheem wasn't. Let's do this. Raheem got that job over Vrabel, too. So, I mean, we're not talking about a guy who was like the fifth choice here.
How much were they paying Vrabel? Because he got fired, too. How much was
Vrabel's a $13 million a year guy.
So that goes back to your point.
Yeah, money.
Are you going to pick up the $13 million guy or pay somebody 5 or 6?
Yeah, you're going to pay that off. There's a lot of the reason. See, those coaches are still under contract.
People forget, like we talk a lot about player contracts. Coaching contracts can get a little fishy too.
Did you hear what the big statement went around from the NFL offices in Park Avenue? All these coaches were being fired with deals left and years left on their deals. Do you know, Tone, that it added up almost like $800 million?
Let's go through the names. Frank Reich, Brandon Staley, Arthur Smith, Vrabel, Belichick. Who did I miss? Pete Carroll.
All guys with money on their deal.
All these guys have money on their deals. All of them.
Okay.
So
even
that makes
the
a lot of
guys
sense.
who were just fired. I mean, that guy Matt Rule had money left on his deal
Rule,
in Carolina.
Yes. Matt Rule had a lot of money on that deal.
Okay. He had money left. All the coaches that had Brian Flores had money left on his deal when they fired him, and Chris Greer had just given him an extension. Shit, man. Frank had money left on his deal in Indy and Carolina.
Exactly.
I mean, if you go back just to 2-3 years ago, what's his name? Didn't the guy Cliff Kingsbury, didn't he have 3 or 4 years left on his Arizona deal?
They fired him a year after giving him that huge extension.
Right. He was making $16.5 a year.
Matter of fact, it wasn't even a year later. It was about 10 games later. 11 games later. It was crazy.
They gave him like almost $20 million a year. And he's like, hey, man, shit. That's why he's in college and not the pros right now.
Right, because that money don't touch each other.
That's right. Owners can't touch the money. Yeah.
And that's why I don't trust that man. Because he put the almighty dollar ahead of the game.
How about this, Tone? Before I get into some of these questions here, watch this.
Yes.
Where's this thing here? All right. Damn, that Kyle Hamilton's a good player, man.
Yeah, man.
Damn, he's good. He was a 14th pick? Oh, shit. We could have had him in 22? Yeah. Damn, that Trent McDuffie's a good player with Kansas City, man. He was the 21st player taken in the 22 draft. That edge rusher they got from Purdue.
George Karlaftis. I wanted him. Yep, I wanted him.
He was the 30th
I wanted him bad, man.
Damn, those guys were great.
30th. Yep.
And we took Jordan Davis. So do you trust Howie? Oh, by the way, I have to go back and ask you now about our A.J. Brown trade.
Right.
Kansas City's in the Super Bowl for the second straight year without Tyreek Hill.
Right.
Their defense is better, correct? Kansas City's than it was even when the Super Bowl you played 12 months ago, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so what are we doing here, Tone? I mean, you're telling me.
What's your question?
Oh, okay, my question is, what's the problem trading A.J. Brown for assets and rebuilding my defense when knowing full well I don't have the money to really do a lot of damage in free agency, and I have all these draft picks? I just went through 3 guys we passed on, so okay, there's something there too. But I mean, I don't know, man. Kansas City did it right. They got rid of the greatest deep threat in NFL history, and now they're in the Super Bowl 2 straight years. And look at the money they're spending on wideout compared to what the Eagles are spending on with assets and money. And the running back's a 7th rounder or 6th rounder, whatever he is. He's spending no money there. I mean, dude, you got some high-flying guys over here.
Yeah, I guess for me, well, you know, if we're referencing the because we had this conversation on Friday or was it Thursday? I can't remember. Friday. Yeah. I wasn't against, you know, your premise.
No, you think it's a year too soon.
Yeah, that's all. That's all, because I've already thought about the idea of offing players that have produced a lot for the Philadelphia Eagles. I've already considered trading Hassan Reddick. You know, I've already considered trading Josh Sweat. I've considered trading some guys. But as far as AJ Brown goes, yeah, I'm not against the idea of taking a gamble and trying to get as many assets and free up as much money as possible to rebuild that defense. That begs the question: how much faith do you have in your quarterback, Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman? How much faith do you have in your quarterback to be able to pick up that slack? How much faith do you have in Howie Roseman to be able to actually do something with those said draft picks and or money? It's a
Do you know how empowered Mahomes is?
Hold on, real quick.
It's
real quick. It's easy to say, well, Kansas City did it. It should be the blueprint. It's very easy to say that, but a few things had to go right. They had to hit on those draft picks.
Kansas City and New England,
right? It's a few.
They both did that plan.
Right. It's a few things that have to go right, and obviously, with Patrick Mahomes already being who he is, it makes that decision a lot easier, and he's one of one. So again, the premise is there. I'm not against it. I just think I might be a year away from making that decision. I need to see Jalen Hurts standing on more stable ground before I make that decision.
You can do that when you have Mahomes and Brady, right?
Correct. And both those guys are one of one. There's no one in the category.
With Purdy, right?
No, you would never do that with Purdy.
Okay. However, Purdy's in the Super Bowl making less than $900,000.
Right.
What's the formula on building your team?
Fun
having
fact
a $50 million quarterback or having a balanced roster?
I'm willing to argue the best way to build your football team is to not even draft a quarterback in the first round. I'm willing to argue draft your quarterback maybe 3rd, 4th, 5th round.
What was Dak? 4th?
Dak was in the 4th. I'm willing to argue draft the guy in the later rounds, build the roster up around him, and then coach him up. And then the chips fall where they may. I'm willing to argue that's a better mindset than leveraging, because think about it. You leverage everything. You
keeps your roster strong for more years too.
Yes, and also think about this. Think about how much that goes into drafting a quarterback in the first round. You're 9 times out of 10 you might have to move up to get him. So let's just say you trade a first and whatever amount of picks to move up to get him. So you get him, right? So boom, you've given up draft picks to get him. Then come contract time, then you got to pay him. And if he's even a B+ quarterback or a B level quarterback, you got to pay him market rate. So you done gave up your draft picks for the present and the future to move up to get him. You gave up north of $50 million annually to keep him. So now it's like, okay, if he doesn't, it puts more pressure on organizations to win Super Bowls in their rookie contract more than ever.
Absolutely.
And it's
That's
not easy
key.
it's not easy to do.
And
it's one of the harder things to do.
And the leverage of the money. I'll show you this. This is what both
Mm-hmm.
New England and Kansas City did. Early on, they didn't have to pay their quarterbacks because one was on a rookie deal. Brady was a 6th rounder, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what did they do? They built their rosters up. They built the rosters up
as much as they could.
You know, I always thought Belichick was better in later rounds and free agents than he was in first rounders.
That's how I feel about Howie Roseman.
That entire defensive football team and all those guys with non-first rounders, especially on the offense. Kansas City had all those great players early on. Tyreek Hill, you had tight end, you had Orlando Brown as your left. You had a bunch of really good players. You had Honey Badger that was in your secondary. You were all of a sudden you realize we got the guy. So what happens? You are afforded because Mahomes can carry a team on his back without a 1,000-yard wideout the same way Brady can, because those guys were winners. And as the roster evolved, they
got
kept
better,
getting cheaper at other positions because they could, because the quarterback could carry them. What happened? They paid early. The roster built the roster up, and the quarterback carried them home.
Exactly, and
that's what you have in Kansas City,
right?
See,
and again, think about the two guys we're talking about here.
No.
We're talking about two
exceptional. Okay,
they're literally exceptions to the rule.
I don't think you could do that with Peyton Manning.
Right. I don't think you could have did it with Aaron Rodgers either. So it's just, you know, they're just unique commodities in the league that they're generational players that afford you generational situations.
So to your point though, about paying a quarterback 50.
Because look, hear me out on this.
Do you see Arizona winning anything with him out there?
No, I don't. But hear me out on this, right? You know, it's like, because again, like I said, the only luxury you have with drafting a quarterback in the first round is you get the 5th-year option. That's the only luxury to it. After that, what's the real luxury to drafting a guy in the first round? Okay, maybe you get a better talent pool. But here's my logic, right? 9 times out of 10, I'm going to know if he's the guy before year 4 anyway. I'm going to know if he's the guy, at least by year 3. And by then, that's when. So and by then, you either have to pick up the option if he's a first rounder, or if he's not, you just let him ride out. And here's the thing: usually, when you're a later round pick, they're not obligated to jump on your contract as if you were a first round pick. So again, with Brock Purdy, he gives them so much flexibility because watch, he's going to go into that. He's not going to have a new contract signed until, listen to this. He signed a 4-year, $3.7 million contract as a rookie, right? Guess how much? Guess how much of the contract is guaranteed? Just guess.
God forbid, half.
I'm about to blow your mind. Out of the $3.7 million that Brock Purdy signed for,
under $1 million a year,
$77,000 is guaranteed.
It's the greatest contract in pro football history for a guy that's going to a Super Bowl.
It's the best contract in the NFL.
I've never seen anything like this.
$77,000.
You know, Tone, for all the things they got hit over the head with the Trey Lance deal, somebody tapped the 49ers on the shoulder and said, okay, you really got screwed over. Here's this gift because, dude, he's $77,000 is the only money guaranteed in $3 million over the next 4.
That's why he has a
Super Bowl. Don't you feel somewhat obligated to do something for the kid? I don't know you legally.
This is what they do. This is what they should do if they're smart. This is what they should do. Remember when Jordan Love was poised to become the starter last offseason? They extended him like 2 years. Gave him some more money. You know what I'm saying? But what it did was it allowed them to pick up the option, but also it afforded them a couple more years at a significantly cheaper rate because they really didn't know what he was. So tack on 2 more years after that 5th year at about what, 35 million, 30 million, if that. They got him super cheap. And then Brock Purdy, I wouldn't be surprised if they do the exact same thing. Hey, Brock, you won a Super Bowl. Here's a 2-year extension. We're gonna throw $50 million on top of that. You span it out over 2 years, $25 million. Like, they're going to find a
They're in
way
such
to
a
keep
great
this guy
place.
as cheap as possible.
They're in
And
such.
they're going to be able to do it.
You know what, Tone, I said last year, and everyone in here per man said that I was insane. I said I'd rather have Brock Purdy's situation than Jalen Hurts or any other quarterback in the NFL.
Why wouldn't
Just
you?
because of the financial ramifications
It's
that
business.
he gives that team for the next 4 years, man. I mean, you're going to be – the 49ers are going to have continued success if they do it right with John Lynch, and he has.
If they do it right.
If they do it right, Tone, they're going to be around as a top 3 team in the NFC for the next 5 years. They're built for stability.
Here's the thing that, people got to understand. When it comes to sports, outside of the tribalism, the fandom, the gear, and all that stuff, the chants, outside of all that sexy stuff that we like to talk about, outside of that, sports is built on one basic concept: cost and benefit.
Yep.
It's just that simple. How much does it cost me to get to where I want to be?
Absolutely.
And how much does having this person on my roster or having this coach benefit me? Cost and benefit, risk, reward.
That's right.
It's all about that. Return on investment. That's what it's always about in sports.
My coach's scale. Okay. And by the way, you know what that applies to too, Tone? Your bullshit is here. Your production is here.
Exactly.
Cost, benefit. You do all of that. Watch this. Performance, attitude. Okay, the performance is still here. Keeping them on my roster.
And guess what? For Brock Purdy,
a lot of coaches use that scale on everything on players.
Exactly. And when it comes to Brock Purdy specifically, cost, 7th round pick. Benefit, Super Bowl. Super Bowl
and the
appearance.
money.
And the money. So at the end of the day, if you take your emotions out of it, when it comes to cost and benefit right now in Philadelphia, they're not on the right side of things right now. So they got to find a way. That's why I can't wait to
we're going to get
Kellen Moore
into
conversation
the coordinators here in a second.
Because this is a pivotal time for Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles, right? You have to make sure the benefit right now is outweighing the cost in your situation. And right now, cost is outweighing benefit for the Eagles.
You know what? I was gonna ask you another topic there, but let me write it. Hold on, because I got CTE there, and I'm gonna write that one down because. Oh, actually, you know what? Let me do it now because, you see, Tone is really, I love it. Tone is in the camp that, it was time to move on from.
I'm so glad you brought this up. I was waiting for this conversation.
It was time to move on after 14 years. From a dynasty builder in Kansas City because he had really not a lot of good years at the end. I think the last 2 were not.
He became a dynasty builder. He became that.
Well,
I think it's important.
Hey, Laura Ingram, I'll get there. Okay, hang on here for a minute. I hate when she interrupts people, but then again, I interrupt everyone. I interrupt you as a matter. Anyway, hang on. So man. So kind of just ran out of gas. It was time to move on.
Yeah.
So what does he do? Hang on. What's he do? He's now in his 4th Super Bowl in 5 years as head coach of the Chiefs. And he's found Patrick Mahomes, built up a football team around him, put back into Kansas City what Hank Stram had back in the day when Lamar Hunt had the team. It was time to move on in Philadelphia. Isn't that right, Tone? It was just time.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it just happens like that. We all end up in relationships that were great for us in the beginning, and then you hit a peak, and you hit valleys, and sometimes you plateau on the plane.
But you divorced him.
Exactly. So sometimes things come to an end.
No, he didn't want it to end. You divorced him. Wasn't like he divorced you.
Typically in relationships, it's always one-sided. Typically. Yeah. When things
so you
end.
Divorced Andy Reid.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Now, here's the context because context matters. You're implying he would have drafted him, and that's a different conversation. So here's how things ended off. Let me just give you the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years with Andy Reid. So 2007, 8-8.
Okay.
2008, 9-6. 2009, 11-5. 2010, 10-6. 2011, 8-8. 2012, 4-12. Those final 6 or 7 years, they peaked and then they plummeted terribly. So again, you spend 14 years with a guy, although his time with the Eagles actually mirrors this time with the Chiefs pretty closely. Listen to this. So his first few years in KC, 11-5, 9-7, 11-5, 12-4. And then they draft Mahomes in 2017, 10-6. Mahomes didn't play that year. And then 2018, 12-4. Mahomes, that's his breakout year. His first few years in Philadelphia, 1999, 5-11. Then 2000.
Coming out of Ray Rhodes, right?
Right, yep. And then 2000, 11-5. 2001, 11-5. 2002, 12-4. 03, 12-4. 04, 13-3. And then he had that plummet year in 05, which is 6-10. The difference between those, because again, everything's and also they made it to those NFC those conference championships those years. It wasn't like he was foreign to success when he got to KC. He knew how to get there, right? He had that, but he couldn't get over the hump. Why?
It was just time to move on.
Clearly, there was a deficiency at quarterback. Clearly, there was a deficiency in roster building. Clearly, he was heavily distracted. I hate bringing up people. I hate bringing up that kind of stuff, but it's a reality.
I know. That was his probably also carried over a little bit of that in Kansas City with the fiasco that happened 2 years ago too with the other kid.
With the car accident.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's important, when we discuss Andy Reid's tenure in Philadelphia and in Kansas City, context is so important in these situations because he is not the same coach that he was back then. He is not. I think he's more, how can I put this?
You think Brett Veach has more say in him than him in Kansas City when he fired John Dorsey? He fired John Dorsey, who found Mahomes.
Do I think Andy Reid has more say over Brett Veach?
Yeah, over Brett Veach. That's his handpicked
I don't know if it's in a vacuum like that, but what I'm willing to say is he's taken on a lot less responsibility as of late with the Chiefs than he had with the Philadelphia Eagles. That's one thing.
He's a better delegator today?
Yes, absolutely. He's better everything today. I think his
situational play calling is off the charts great.
I think he's more agreeable now. Also back then, I'm glad you said what you said. Back then, what was the number one knock on Andy Reid?
His 2 minutes and a half.
His final 2 minutes, his clock management was awful.
And his challenging was awful.
Awful. He gets to this new situation, KC, he gets Mahomes. Mahomes makes your job a lot easier, doesn't it?
Oh,
really? So again, I'm not taking nothing away from the fact that you got to draft them, you got to develop them, you got to put the pieces around them. I acknowledge all of that kind of stuff.
You think Mahomes would be the same Mahomes without Reid?
Oh no, not at all. And that's why I hate the conversations when people say, "Oh, Brady needed Belichick or Belichick needed." I hate those conversations because
they both need one another.
They needed each other. It works hand in hand.
Quarterback had a great coach.
Exactly. Listen, we have two hands for a reason. You can't do one thing without the other. So again, what am I going to say? No, like I'm giving my right hand more credit for the for the quality of my life. I'm giving my left hand more credit. It doesn't make any sense. So you need a head coach, you need a quarterback. If they just so happen to be super successful together, appreciate that. And if they happen to separate, okay, things happen. But if one guy happens to win after the other guy leaves or whatever it may be, okay, that just means he's the player. The player has more
ego conversations,
right? It's I hate ego talk.
Those are ego conversations.
Yeah.
Hey, who was more responsible for this?
That's not even that. It doesn't even make sense when people have those conversations. I leave those conversations to ESPN. That's ESPN talk.
Doesn't it just make more sense that both had the same equal say in what got you to the championship?
Belichick had to draft him. Belichick had to develop him. Belichick had to put the pieces around him. Belichick had to come up with the game.
Brady had to listen.
Let's not act like those first few Super Bowls they were won by Adam Vinatieri and defense.
Yep. And defense.
Come on, man.
And then Brady took the back end once he got it in there.
Exactly. So
that's what Mahomes is doing now.
Right. So again, when it comes to Andy Reid in Philadelphia and KC, it's just, it's easy for me to say, oh, how do you let a guy like that go? Well, 4 wins, 8 wins, like it was 14 years. He peaked and he was never the same after. It was time.
Are you surprised what he's doing now in KC?
No, because when
you knew that guy from where?
I knew he was a good coach. I knew he was a good coach.
That's not a good coach in Kansas City. That's a phenomenal coach in Kansas City.
Well, okay. I mean semantics, but I knew he was great at his job.
Yeah,
I knew he was. I always knew he was great at his job.
That good in Philly. On what you're seeing now, again, like you said.
Well, again, remember
he's got Mahomes. I'm like, again, we're going back to the conversation. Both guys need one another to succeed here.
Right.
Are you surprised where he is now in his 4th Super Bowl in 5 years?
Am I surprised that
6th straight AFC title game?
He's a great coach. No, I'm not. Like he's
so was he a great coach in Philly?
Yeah, he was a good coach. He was. Man, if I put you this way,
No, you call him a good coach.
No, that's what I'm trying to clean it up. He's a great coach now. He's a Hall of Fame coach now. He was a really good coach back then. He's a really good coach for sure. I mean, look, he made it to what 3 or 4 consecutive NFC Championship games. You don't get there by being bad, right? He knew how to build it. He knew how to build the team to an extent. He didn't believe in wide receivers for some reason, but nonetheless,
he still doesn't.
He had a great staff around him.
Dude, he still doesn't believe in wideouts.
Right. The quarterback is significantly better. I mean, I don't think anybody's confusing Donovan McNabb for Patrick Mahomes. So, again, I'm not trying to get into the conversation of who needs 2. I'm just saying when you have a quarterback of the caliber of Mahomes, it can make up for a lot of mistakes you may make. And, it also gives you license and freedom to make certain personnel decisions. It gives you flexibility. Donovan McNabb, through all the great moments he's given us, he had his limitations. At that time, Andy Reid, he clearly had his limitations. So again, it's hard for me to sit here and say, oh, they made a mistake letting him go. Things happen. It is what it is. He took you to 4 NFC title games and 1 or 5, however many it was.
5 in a row.
5 NFC title games, 1 Super Bowl appearance, not a win. An appearance.
So he failed.
Yes, he failed. Jeffrey Lurie underachieved. Listen, Sills, I'm a very hard grader. Yeah, all of them. Even Howie when he was interning, all that crap. He got to wear it too. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say Andy Reid had his time in Philadelphia. He gave us great years. The best, arguably the best time in Philadelphia. But when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, the object of this game is to win Super Bowls. He did not do that. On top of that, he got you there, made you smell it, but you couldn't taste it. So there we go. That's my gripe.
Okay. Let's go. It's just time to move on. And
quite literally, yeah.
Okay. You moved on to a dynasty. I got it.
Yeah, so it took him 7 years to get there after that, but you know what I mean? No, I'm just saying, just keep in mind, he was in KC for how long before Mahomes got there? They won double-digit. They had double-digit wins, but
he also won a division with Matt Castle.
Oh, right. He's a spectacular coach. Also,
they won 11 games with Matt Castle.
Right. So he got to KC in 2013. So 1, 2, 3, 4 seasons before Mahomes gets there, and
he had a good record, dude. He just couldn't get it home.
Right, because he didn't have what? The quarterback. And what happens when you get one?
Coach, I got you, man.
Now we've seen coaches with good quarterbacks and still couldn't get it done. So, but regardless, though, yeah.
All right,
Andy Reid, his time came and went. That's all it is. It happens.
Time to move on. I get it. Kellen Moore, OC, and Vic Fangio, the DC. Who do you want to start with first?
Let's start with the fresh one. Let's start with Kellen. Yeah.
Okay. Well, here. And I'm going to go through kind of a little synopsis on him here. And then I'm going to ask you a question. He's been a coordinator 5 years. And he's been a coordinator on teams. And again, 43-40. Not all his. He's not a personnel guy. He has nothing to do with the defense, nothing to do with the head coach. These are, again, it's an example of when you talk to me about numbers, what did the team do as a unit and how far did they go as a unit? So kind of the same thing that we had in Philly this year. Guys had great numbers offensively still. Guys had career years, but it didn't lead anywhere. And so that's kind of the same scenario in Dallas. They never really got past the divisional round. Okay. And again, this is not an indictment on him yet. All I'm saying is, what quarterback has he truly developed? The Chargers 21st in points, 18th in total yards. Now, again, misleading because the last 5 didn't have Herbert. But when I watched Justin Herbert play, I saw Dak get better in Dallas, and I saw Herbert get worse with him.
Correct.
There's no denying that. Sirianni said something that, of course, I don't believe. Kellen Fitz hurts his skill set. And I'm like, funny, in 5 years, I don't remember a quarterback with Hurts' skill set that he coached. He has a lot of pre-snap motion. And again, this kind of goes down the model of what the Eagles do. He gets lost in the game where he forgets the run game. So when I look at Kellen Moore, it's kind of like, to me, did they hire a guy in what they want Jalen to look like, or did they hire a guy that fits Jalen's skill set? I think they hired the guy that they want him to look like without the turnovers of 23. That's what they're looking at, because Kellen Moore has no history of dealing with a dual threat quarterback. Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts. Dak Prescott's more like Donovan McNabb than he is Jalen Hurts. Justin Herbert can move, but he's not going to run the ball almost 200 times in a year. And there's no real big-time RPOs in that offense. So I would ask you this, okay? And again, can I tell you that this is a bad hire on January 29th? Absolutely not, and I won't. I'm asking you, is it a good fit in your eyes on what you see with a quarterback, on what he has done with quarterbacks that don't resemble anything Jalen Hurts has done?
Here's the thing, Sills. I almost feel bad for where this conversation is going to go, because obviously not intentionally, you polluted the question a little bit. So I'm going to have to give you my opinion so people can try to believe what I'm saying rather than think I'm just going along with what you're saying, because we actually agree a lot, right? Prior to them hiring Kellen Moore, there were two people there were two coordinators or two candidates that I wasn't interested in. I wasn't interested in Cliff Kingsbury. I wasn't interested in Kellen Moore. I wasn't interested in Cliff Kingsbury because of how things turned out in Arizona. Also, I just don't really trust him. There's something about him. So that's
I think there's a slickness to it that I don't dig.
Right. And then when it comes to Kellen Moore, one of the reasons I didn't want Kellen Moore in Philadelphia is because, A, I've never seen him coach a throw their quarterback. So I have no idea what he can or can't do with a guy like Jalen Hurts. That was my number one point. My secondary point was I saw Dak Prescott have one of his worst passing years in terms of turnovers in 2022 under Kellen Moore's leadership. And then when he gets to LA, I see Justin Herbert have one of his more ineffective years, of his career. So that was my second. Those were my secondary reasons. And my tertiary reason was the fact that, and obviously this reason is not really anything to stand on, but also he was a former Cowboy. The Chargers sucked, but I can't really blame. That's not something I don't make decisions based off of that. That's my fan side talking. But again, my main reasons was I seen two quarterbacks regress under him. And I also didn't really see I didn't see the dual threat nature to his play call. I didn't see him utilizing guys like that. So that's why I said, I was a little nervous about you putting the question because I want to make sure, people believe my opinion is my own. But if
Oh,
people, but if no, I don't think
You don't
it's
have to
not.
quantify it.
No, it's not you. But if people have been listening to the content over the past few weeks, whenever I've been asked about the Eagles OC situation, I've always said I don't want Cliff Kingsbury and I don't want Kellen Moore. Now that they have Kellen Moore, am I going to sit here and say it was a bad hire when I haven't seen him do anything? I can't say that.
I'm not either.
Right. I can't say that. I can't
I
say
think
it's a
we're
bad
asking
hire.
more, is this a good marriage?
Right. And
Is it
usually
compatible?
Right. And usually you don't find out if it's a good marriage until you move in. You put some furniture around, you go through some hard times. You know what I mean? That's how you know if you're in a good marriage or not. So I can't really make a opinion. I can't make a definitive opinion about whether Kellen Moore was a good hire or a bad hire. But this is what I will say. I will say there are aspects, and Rob put me onto this in the last show in Sports Take. What I will say to this is why I'm optimistic about the hire. I'm optimistic because regardless of the outcome, Kellen Moore's offenses have been in the top 5 in terms of picking up the blitz and responding to the blitz. So that tells me he's creative and he has built-in blitz beaters, to respond to what the opponent is throwing at him. That's been a weakness of Jalen Hurts since he's been a starter.
Get out of the fucking shotgun,
right?
And that'll help your blitz package.
And I also feel like Jalen Hurts spends too much time in the shotgun. I would love to see Jalen Hurts under center more. I would love to see him dropping back more, getting creative, doing some bootlegs. I would love to see more of that. That's why I'm optimistic again. His ability to design, to design plays that can respond to the blitz. So that's why I'm optimistic. But overall, I don't know if it's a good hire or a bad hire. We'll see.
Observation about his offense and the player you have. Okay, so you're going to put him under center. Well, that means he's got to work on his feet more because most of the time, the reason you put a guy in shotgun, it could be Peyton Manning, it could be Brady, it could be whomever. Mm-hmm. The number one thing you got to work on is your 7-step drop. Walsh told me years ago, and I've told you this, the guys who get back the quickest are the guys who can process the information on being able to have progressive reading. So are you going to want him to be more of a progressive reader when it comes to having an idea on pre-snap reads and then going through your progressions? That's not kind of what that kid does. So when you put him in a shotgun, that takes that away. That's why you're blitzing, and you're blitzing a kid like that more because you know why? He doesn't read secondaries that much. So he's got a lot of work to do. I think he's got a lot of work to do this offseason. And
I'm okay with that.
I think Kellen Moore is going to be more of a creative designer of pass routes than what we saw with Brian Johnson? I do. So I think those routes will be cleaned up a lot more. And I'm not just talking about AJ's routes. I'm talking about the tight ends routes, and I'm talking about
wide receiver
2 routes. Those routes are going to be cleaned up more. Mm-hmm. And you're going to see more guys in more open space, in my opinion.
And also Tony Pollard and under Kellen Moore had one of his better years. Tony Pollard, his least impactful year was under Mike McCarthy. So we might see Kellen Moore do a little bit more of the running backs in the passing game. We may. It's all remains to be seen. But you said something interesting, right? Jalen Hurts, his skill set doesn't directly correlate with what Kellen Moore does. And I'm okay with that because I'm a firm believer in order to get comfortable, you got to be uncomfortable.
But it's something he hasn't coached.
Say that again?
But he hasn't coached that.
You mean Moore hasn't
coached?
Right. I understand that. But again, I'm putting the onus.
He has no sample size of anything for us to sit here. Now, again,
I'm with you on that.
So you're going to go on the negative end, or are you going to go on the balanced end on that? I'm going to hang in the balanced end because you know what? He may surprise me. I don't know.
Right. And that's
it's January 29th. I can't sit here and go, hey, Sills, he's a suck-ass play caller. I don't know. We haven't seen it. That's not fair. So I'm not going to do that. But Barb said something interesting. You know why there was massive problems? The Eagles put Jalen Hurts in an absolutely unwinnable situation when it came to blitzes. He was in the shotgun 94% of the time. Well, shit, dude. When I know the quarterback is in shotgun 94% of the time, I'm going to blitz the hell out of you. I'm going to blitz the shit out of you on that, and I'm going to win the majority of the time because you're tipping your pass protection off.
And
if
also,
you don't have people that are good pass protectors in your running back position, or you have guys like weak at the guard at the right position in pass protection, guys that are injured and they're getting home, the chances of you having high turnovers and you're in shotgun almost 100% of the time, bro, I mean, that's why I think you clean a lot of that blitzing up by putting him under center.
right. And, Jalen Hurts has already shown me that he can throw the ball north of 500 times in the season and still maintain some level of solid completion percentage.
Just cut that damn
Just cut the turnovers
down to half,
if he cuts the turnovers down, we're looking at a whole different quarter. That's all. Half. He had 19. If he cuts it down to 10.
If he got that down to 10, he'd be in the NFC title game.
That's a whole different quarterback we're talking about here. So I don't think
plus with the reps.
I don't think Jalen Hurts is as far away from being the player that we think he could be as much as we think. I just think that he went through a tough transition year, these new coaches, but also I feel like, I know a lot of people don't want to say it, but I feel like the mechanics was lacking a bit. I was paying attention to his feet all year. His feet wasn't good to me.
And now you're going to ask him to drop back more.
His feet wasn't good this year, but his feet was good in 22. So again, I have to look at that and say,
they had
okay,
the RPO element in though.
Right. So again, we're banking on what can Kellen Moore do to maximize this young man's skill set. And again, I can't definitively say either or. All I can say is there are things about what Kellen Moore does that Jalen Hurts needs to add to the arsenal. Because look, at the end of the day, let's stop pussyfooting around it. Jalen Hurts has to get better. I'm paying attention to Patrick Mahomes. I'm paying attention to, and again, Patrick Mahomes is an outlier. He's a freak of nature. He's not even human. I understand he's a different category. But I'm looking at the quarterbacking that's going on in the playoffs right now. Jalen Hurts got to step his damn weight up, Sills. Yeah. I'm tired of having the conversations about, well, it's not really what that guy does. Well, guess what? Last time I checked, that's what they got practice fields for. That's what they got quarterback coaches for, right? Guys got to get better.
Have to be better.
Listen, the conference is getting better.
It is.
Jordan Love is coming. Jared Goff is there. You know what I'm saying? Dak Prescott, say what you want about him. He's gonna be a thorn in your side, until further notice. Brock Purdy, he's coming. He's here. Purdy is here.
He's 60 minutes away.
You see what I'm saying? So I don't have time for, that's just not, I don't have time for that, Sills. I'm not coming at you, but I'm just so passionate about development. I'm passionate about doing the things that make you uncomfortable so you can get comfortable. If Jalen Hurts is going to have any chance of being one of the top tier quarterbacks, he's going to have to win from the pocket, period. He's dual threat. He's always going to have that in the skill set. He's always going to be dynamic. We're not taking that away from him. But when it's all said and done, when it boils down to the nitty gritty, he's going to have to make that throw, not that run.
I think they took his game away from him.
I agree with that.
I'm going to say this to you, that for me on the hire, I mean, he's got to bring out the best in him, not the best in Kellen Moore.
Exactly. And you have coordinators out here who like to make it about them.
I don't know that they hired a guy who's going to bring the best out in him when he's never coached him or a guy like him.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm not sure of.
That's my concern.
That's my number one concern. I've never seen him coach a quarterback like this. Can he find a way to maximize this quarterback skill set?
He may surprise us,
and he can very well surprise me. I'm not saying he won't. I'm not saying he will. I'm telling people right now, hey,
yeah,
All right. I mean, it's not a bad hire, but
No,
I'm not going to.
I just don't see it.
I'm not going to say it's a slam dunk either.
Yeah, but like I said, Tone, I just don't see the compatibility. Like I mean, they must see something different.
You know what I think they're seeing?
You know what though? They want him to be their version, and that's why they hired him. I don't think Hurts had anything to do with this hire. I don't think he had anything to do with this. Nothing.
This is what I think. I think he had more to do with it than what we think. And this is what, and I don't mean as far as like the conversation, like, oh yeah, this is what we're doing. I think more so along the lines of what they felt like they needed from the quarterback position, right? So Jalen Hurts, I believe, out of all those turnovers he had, more than half of them came due to being blitzed, due to pressure, basically, right? So I guess they look at it like this. We had this quarterback that completed 66% of his passes, threw for nearly 4,000 yards, put up north of 4,400 total yards, 38 total touchdowns. Oh, by the way, he gave you 19 turnovers. So I think in their mind, they look at it as, okay, if most of his turnovers and most of his issues came because he couldn't pick up the blitz, let's bring in somebody who clearly has a track record in responding well to the blitz. And then whatever Jalen Hurts gives us after that is the best version of Jalen Hurts. Because again, when we look at the numbers, we always say, well, you cut those turnovers down, he's the MVP. We say that all the time. But again, if Jalen Hurts can't respond well to the blitz, we're going to always see the turnovers. I think that was their leaning point. But again, back to my original point. I don't quite see it. But I'm also not going to kill it either. I'm not going to kill the hire. I'm not going to praise the hire. I'm just, all right, okay, we'll see how this thing goes. That's all. And I don't think
it's like a draft pick on a Monday conversation after the draft, Tone.
It's a greatest
draft.
The guy's
a bust.
How?
He doesn't even have a helmet yet.
Right.
I mean, you can't go there. So here, let me get to Vic. And let me give you this here a little bit. He's 65. I don't care about that.
Yeah. Now that signing makes the most sense because that's the guy you wanted from the beginning.
Listen to it. I want you to listen to it.
Right.
Don't expect a blitz ratio to increase. Okay. He believes that he believes in containing control, which means bend but don't break. Keep everything underneath. He trying to get you into dink and dunk. Well, if you're going to try to get offenses into dink and dunk, you need corner and linebacker play to do that, which you have none of that. He likes balance at both levels, D-line and linebacker and secondary. He wants to see balance there. And they have to address, obviously, the cornerback position. But maybe he doesn't because, again, you know, when I look at this, Tone, to me, in my opinion, when I look at this is the same shit they've been doing the last 3 years, man. There's nothing different here except they just got more experience. Then I would ask you this. Well, why the fuck didn't you do this last year? I mean, why do you go from one polar opposite to the other polar opposite when you really haven't changed your hire? Your fundamental scheme and your fundamental ideology has not changed whatsoever. Mm-hmm. Howie said in the press conference last week, he doesn't think it's personnel. So they got more. It makes sense. But the last 2 years have been contradicting to one another when you're staying with the same scheme. You're staying with the same ideology on pressure. You hired a guy with more experience than you had last year. It just tells me, okay, you were a year late in hiring a guy that had experience, and you're staying with the same shit you did last year. How is Vic Fangio going to fix that mess with that personnel? And you think he's going to turn that, and I'm saying you are thinking that, but you're going to turn that thing into a top 10 defense with the shittiest linebackers and secondary play that we've seen in maybe in the last 25 years in Philadelphia. You think he's turning that around because he's more experienced?
Experience can't save that defense.
He may be the right hire because it's the same shit they're doing, but he's got a lot of work to do, dude. And he doesn't have any money.
Yeah, he has a lot of work to do. And here's the thing, right, about the way the Philadelphia Eagles have been calling defense the past few years. What they've been doing is that they've been somehow forcing these defensive coordinators to run a defense that they're really not that's really not their calling card. People have Jonathan Gannon completely mixed up. People love to say, "Oh, he believes in the Fangio style." Not necessarily. Jonathan Gannon comes from the school of Mike Zimmer.
He's more aggressive now in Arizona than he was at all in Philly.
Right. Gannon comes from the school of Mike Zimmer, right? He believes in pressure. We all know those Mike Zimmer defense, those zone blitzes, and he believes in getting pressure. In Philadelphia, that wasn't the case. Why? Because it went against the organizational philosophy. Sean Desai, he started out in Seattle, then became the Bears DC, right? So, or was it the opposite? Was he the Bears DC? Then he went to Seattle. I can't remember.
He was the Bears DC for 1 year. Then he became an assistant to Pete Carroll,
right?
As a special consultant to the head coach.
Right. So when you think about that, and I know they say Sean Desai is probably the closest to a Vic Fangio disciple as it gets, but he was with Pete Carroll, and Pete Carroll and Vic Fangio, they do things very differently. Completely. So I've always felt like the Philadelphia Eagles have been requiring their head coaches call defense a certain way, because we see in Arizona, Gannon is doing something totally different. Now we bring in Vic Fangio. Now they have the original. They had the guy that created it all. I think this is what they wanted all along, but they obviously couldn't get their hands on them. Their problems, in my opinion, go far beyond Vic Fangio, though. They need players. They need talent. And then this goes back to your original point that you asked me earlier. Am I willing to trade a player that I love for draft capital to free up some money? I can't rule it out. I can't rule it out, because at the end of the day, is this about the Philadelphia Eagles or is this about the Philadelphia Eagles offense?
I'm moving Reddick.
I'm moving somebody. I said this to Rob earlier. I said, look,
what do you think you can get for Reddick?
He's 29 or 28, something like that. 4 back-to-back years, double-digit sacks. You might get a low second, high third for Reddick.
Really quality picks. Yeah, but I would want multiple, because he's a $20 million, and I don't have to pay him. Remember the New England way: get rid of them while they have gas in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get rid of them and turn the car back in with no gas in it.
Mm-hmm.
Because then guess what? You're selling lemons, and you're not getting anything back in return.
Exactly.
Your trade-in value. Always look at players like you're doing in your car. What's the trade-in return value that I get on the new vehicle I'm purchasing?
Let me ask you this. Who do you think are the top 3 players on the Philadelphia Eagles in terms of trade value that you can get the most out of?
The only reason I'm not going to put AJ number 1 is because that dead cap money, if they were, it's gargantuan this year. Next year, like you said, he's probably more feasible.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's
now,
what I'm aiming at.
With that new CBA though, Tone, you can put that and defer a lot of that money out now.
Yeah, you kick the bucket down the road for years.
Kick it down the road now and defer
Did you know
that
the
money.
Eagles, I believe, they just finished paying Alshon Jeffrey.
Yes.
They just finished.
He had 5 years remaining on that when they blew him out.
They deferred it. They broke it down and said, look, we'll give you.
When the new CBA came, they ripped it up, because that's what they were getting in trouble with, those Todd Gurley deals that the Rams had on the books for like $50 million. And the owner said this: hey, I don't mind paying the player that, but it can't kill our cap, because then it puts us in purgatory. They ripped it up, restructured the negotiations for them to be able to defer a lot of that money out if they want over 5 years. The NFLPA agreed to it, which I always thought, like Brady, funny, NFL owners' value went up. Their revenue went up during COVID, but the player salaries went down, and so did the cap. How'd that work? Whatever. So they agreed to sign that, and that's how they are able to defer that money out. So sometimes when you see people with a lot of money, now The only reason that they did it, the Eagles did it that way with Wentz, it was a one-year hit because they had the quarterback still on that rookie contract.
Correct.
And they didn't want that affecting their cap once they paid him 2 years later. So they said, fuck it, let me take the $33 million hit and a one-time hit. And what did they get back in return? If you remember correctly, they got a first and like a third or something.
Correct. Yep.
And so there was a trade-off with a one-time hit plus a number 1 and a 3, and it was a one-year hit on the cap, and the cap went up.
Sills, you know what you're breaking down, right? You're breaking down cost and benefit.
Absolutely.
That's the basis
when you talk
of sports.
NFL, you have to.
You have to break down cost and benefit. When you're talking about it on the level that we're talking about it, you got to break down cost and benefit.
Kansas City. Man, do we get rid of Tyreek Hill? That must have been so frightening for Mahomes.
Oh, yeah.
Think about let me go here with you.
Yeah.
You know how frightening that must have been for Mahomes to go like this, and Andy and Veach and Clark Hunt, the owner of the team, will walk
because you got to sell him on it. You got to sell him on that.
Move Tyreek Hill, and he's like, "Damn." He goes, "We believe you. That's why we gave you $500 million. We believe you." Shit, what does he do? He goes for 5,400 yards.
Mm-hmm.
They win a Super Bowl without him. And Andy Reid's like, wow. All of a sudden at the beginning of this year, starts wobbling. Remember those games, even against the Eagles? Everyone was questioning the wideouts, and Mahomes kept going, it's okay. We're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. Andy Reid kept telling him, we're going to be okay. You progressively got better. Your defense got better. Your football team now punches its ticket to the second Super Bowl in a row without a 1,000-yard receiver 2 years in a row. Think about this, folks. The Chiefs have a chance to win 2 Super Bowls in a row without a 1,000-yard receiver.
Correct.
And a 1,000-yard back.
Correct.
That's unbelievable. And then the player now becomes more empowered and more important to the Chiefs, because if you're the owner, man, I'm not paying a goddamn guy on that football team offensively anymore ever again. I'm going to do what they did in New England. Hey, you ain't going to be the highest paid guy here, because you know why?
It's a generational luxury.
That guy right there is the guy. And if you want to play and win a couple Super Bowls so you can make money other places, have at it. But you'll never be the highest paid guy at any position on offense in Kansas City. That's what went on in New England for generations. So, all that being said, when you have a guy like Devontae or AJ and all these people in here are saying this, hey, man, I wouldn't trade the guy. Well, then you're not looking to win.
Yeah. What Mahomes affords the Chiefs, that's what you call a generational luxury. The ability to
Mahomes built the defense himself.
Basically, it's because remember, they took a flyer on that defense last season. And what I mean is
starting 2 rookie corners.
That defense was shaky at first, but about the time they got to the end, they knew their jobs. They were more confident. Those guys weren't rookies anymore.
By the time they got to the Super Bowl,
they were ready.
They were ripening.
Exactly. So again, the bottom line is the Eagles are going to have, this is my final point before I get out of here for JAKIB. The Eagles are going to have to leverage and make a lot of decisions this offseason, and they're going to have to really evaluate, back to my original point, cost and benefit. What do I got to sacrifice to get to where I want to be? Is it worth it? How much am I spending over here? Do I got to trade this guy? This is going to be an offseason. These next 2 off seasons are going to be riddled with decision after decision after decision. And Eagles fans are not going to be happy. But trust me, sometimes you got to take a little pain to get to the love, baby. That's all you got to do.
Hey, now you sound like you know my wife. Thank you very much. I appreciate. Now you must know my wife. I appreciate. Hey, Tone. So one last thing here. Yes. You're okay with, before I get to Gary Kopp, you're okay with Kellen Moore has never coached a dual threat quarterback?
I'm indifferent right now. I don't have an opinion quite yet. Okay. All I can say is he has offenses in the past that have done very well, that have been top 5 in terms of responding to the blitz. That's a positive. Other than that, I have not seen him develop a quarterback. I have seen 2 quarterbacks regress under his watch, and also I've seen quarterbacks. How can I put this? He's never coached a quarterback like Hurts. Let me frame it to you that way.
No,
I've never seen him coach.
coach.
I've seen 2 quarterbacks regress, and I've never seen him coach a dual threat guy. So it all remains to be seen. But again, I don't have a strong opinion either way. We'll see how it goes.
Absolutely. Tone, I appreciate it, my friend.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, you